Mary Care, how's everything going?
Going great. Happy to be in Austin again. Love this town.
Mm-mm.
I'm headed to Allen Boots after this. I need
Okay.
to get. I've been told by Texas Slim that I have got to get a pair of boots while I'm here. So
Okay.
I'm
Well,
on a mission.
I just got a new pair of boots, but these are Lucchese's, so,
They look very sharp, and so I'll
yeah.
be joining you on
Yeah,
the new boots.
you need to get it. I mean, you've been in Texas for how long, and
I'm
you
a
don't have
Texan.
yeah.
I have boots. I have
Mm-hmm.
ropers that I used to
Uh-huh.
dance in. I used to love to country western dance,
Oh,
and so,
nice.
but it's time to take it up a notch. At least according to Texas Slim, as you and I both. He's a friend of both of ours.
Uh-huh. Are you thinking about a hat too, or no?
So he was trying to talk me into the hat, and I said, Slim, as I call him, I think I'm 50-50 on the hat, and that was being generous. But that seemed to appease him. So, no, I'm going for the boots. And then, I don't know, men look so distinguished in hats.
I feel
Women, not, at least on me, not maybe not. We'll see.
I don't know. My theory is that it makes everyone look like 20% better. It doesn't matter if they're young or old, male or female or whatever. It just makes them 10 to 15% at least.
Okay,
better,
well, I'll take
yeah.
your word for that, and I will give it a try. But remember, I'm from Louisiana, so hats weren't our culture, so.
Yeah, but you're in an
But now I'm in
adopted state.
Texas,
Yeah,
and I've been
yeah.
here for over 20 years, so it's probably time to make it happen.
Probably. So, Mary, I brought you on the show because I thought your story was just so interesting, given your profession and how you had to handle your own health and everything else. Can you tell my audience what your background is and what you do for a living?
Yeah, so I'm a medical doctor, traditionally trained. I got I did my undergrad at Texas Christian University and did my medical degree at LSU New Orleans. And then I did a double residency, a 5-year residency in internal medicine and physical medicine and rehabilitation. And then straight out of residency, went into solo practice in what is my board certification in physical medicine and practiced that specialty for many, many years. And that included pain management of any chronic condition like orthopedic conditions, spinal cord injuries, brain injuries, strokes, those sorts of things, rehabilitation. And for some reason, I kind of gravitated towards pain relief. And in doing that, I also incorporated a lot of wellness type things to help people improve. And along my journey of, working too hard and not getting enough sleep and not eating right and not taking care of myself and really putting other people's needs ahead of my own, I got sick, ironically, and became a patient myself. And I looked for help in every way I could possibly think of through specialists and developed an inflammatory autoimmune condition that was very painful. And I don't want to bore you with the details other than I didn't find any relief for a long time. And someone introduced me to functional medicine, which is more of a holistic wellness type of medicine. And so I learned about that and started employing some of the things that I learned and ended up completely healing myself. So once you learn that, you have to incorporate that for the benefit of your patients as well. And so about 10 years ago, I transitioned from mostly interventional pain management, which I still do some of, over to a more holistic approach to taking care of patients.
Functional medicine, basically.
Right. So the difference between kind of the traditional way people treat patients, it's more symptom management, wait for the problem to come up and then try and minimize it as much as possible. And the way functional medicine approach is more get to the root cause of why the problem occurred. Why is the inflammation there? Why is this problem, what caused it to begin with? And fix it from the root cause. It just makes perfect sense. It seems so simple, but it wasn't the way we were trained. We were trained to wait for the problem to get bad enough to need some sort of help in minimizing symptoms. So symptom management versus root cause, eliminate the root cause and hopefully completely heal.
Well, so what was it like when you were a patient and you learned about functional medicine? Because you obviously went through the traditional channels of conventional medicine for a long time, and then you learn about functional medicine. You're a medical doctor. You've gone to school for a long time. You've learned all this. What was your reaction to learning something like functional medicine and thinking, what were your thoughts? What was that like?
You know, it got to the point where I was so desperate, I would try anything. And my quality of life had really decreased. And I was just willing to try anything. And I invested in a 2-year fellowship in functional medicine. And when it came time to invest in that, I just came to the conclusion I'll never know if I don't try. And I've tried everything else. So I learned basically, you start with the gut health and you heal the gut and you start nourishing the body. I was so nutritionally depleted. I was addicted to sugar. I wasn't sleeping. I was so stressed all the time. I was always, like I said, putting other people's needs ahead of my own, and never thought that you need to recharge and re-nourish and focus. And so that's where the journey started. And just by step, getting off of some of the old medications that were, old fashioned, like antibiotics for acne. That was one problem that I had been on for years and years and years and never thought anything of it. But with this way of thinking, I got off of all of that and really focused on healing my gut, nourishing myself, replacing the things that I was deficient in. And I was profoundly deficient in vitamin D. That was huge, just replacing my vitamin D and my minerals. I did some testing and I was completely depleted. I even did a bone density test in my 30s, which should be when you're strong. And I had osteopenia. So that's how depleted of nutrients I was. And so I started doing all of this testing that I was learning about, and then started testing all of my patients as well. And sure enough, we were all in the same boat. We were calorically fine. We were getting by with plenty of calories, if not too many calories, but we were nutritionally depleted. And then sleep, I didn't even think twice about having 4 hours of sleep a night many times. Waking up early, working out, doing a full day. At some point, you have to take care of yourself. And so that's what I learned, and that's what I did. And I did eventually completely heal myself of chronic migraines, chronic acne, digestive issues, inflammatory condition, pain. All of it went away it's kind of like a wilted flower that needs sunshine and nutrients and water. And you think it's going to get better on its own by, giving it an antibiotic. It's not going to happen, or other things that I tried. So it was really just getting to, holistic self-care, wellness, meditation, prayer, sleep, all the basics that we just put on the back burner. It's the easiest thing to put last and the most important thing to put first.
For your health, you mean? For
your health, absolutely. We all put it, put everything else in front of it. And we really need to make it a priority.
Well, so it's interesting that you talk about gut health and being nutritionally deficient. Can you expound on that more? Like what's wrong with, I guess, what you would call the standard American diet?
Oh gosh, there's so much wrong. I think, you can just look at our population and the obesity epidemic, even in our kids. And it starts with, I think, processed food. If we can just get back to good, healthy nutrition and even the food that's not necessarily processed, it's like things that come from a farm, they're grown in soil that has been minerally depleted. So I think the majority of, at least the people that I've tested in my practice, are minerally deficient. I mean, profoundly minerally deficient.
Which minerals?
So many. Magnesium's probably number one. Zinc is probably number 2. Selenium is up there. We always think of calcium as an important mineral. I'd put it much lower on the list. We actually do get a pretty pretty solid amount of calcium, but for some reason that's been the narrative that we all think if we can just take a calcium pill, we're minerally good. But so many things are important. So many of these minerals are important for your brain function, for your hormone production, for your thyroid hormone especially, which is your metabolism. So I think, and we also know that when you're minerally depleted, you're more hungry. So I think it actually comes down to the soil in a lot of ways. A lot of our health problems are related to our soil and not getting the minerals that we used to get. And that causes, a cascade of problems that is so easily fixed.
What causes the depletion in the soil? Why is it so nutritionally deficient, I guess?
So the soil gets used over and over again, and they put the bare minimum back in it for from a mineral standpoint for the crops to grow, but not necessarily for the crops to have sufficient nutrients to really nourish us like we used to 100 years ago, where we would have soil that had not been turned over year after year without replacing the good nutrients. So that's the situation we're in, is demineralization.
So how do you identify foods that have, I guess, sufficient minerals versus ones that don't? Like, where do you shop and where do you tell your patients to shop and so on?
It's hard to get minerals from just food now. So I really recommend supplementing with like a multi-mineral and certain vitamins that our food just doesn't have enough of. But a really healthy source of minerals is animal proteins, specifically grass-fed beef, especially if it's from a regenerative farmer who focuses on tending the land and making sure that it regenerates and has the right nutrients to grow the grass, to feed the cow. So supplementation, unfortunately, is I use quite a bit now in my practice, just because it is very hard to get enough of the supplements that we need to really not just get by, but to feel good and to have a healthy immune system. In fact, I think minerals have played a huge role in our pandemic because they're so key for immune function. And I think vitamin D deficiency is another huge one. We're not getting enough sunshine. We're in a building. You're probably working the majority of your day in a building. So you're not, the best way to get vitamin D is from the sun, but you're working 8 hours in prime sunlight, probably in a building. And so the chances of you getting a sufficient amount of vitamin D, and especially if you have more melanin in your skin, it's even harder. So people like African Americans have a much harder time absorbing it from the sun. So supplements are the next best thing to the sun, but all of these things have played a really big role in our immunity, our immune function, and our ability to fight viruses. And I think if we were minerally repleted, I guess, not depleted, but replaced the minerals, and we replace vitamin D, those would be two huge ways of improving outcome. There's so many other ways, but healthy metabolism and healthy liver function, and we can get into all of those sorts of things. But for your listeners, I think identify that it's a significant problem and that there's a very simple solution. And usually it involves supplements right now, but there may be a way to find regenerative farmers that do the right thing with the soil. And I know that's becoming a hotter topic, especially here in Texas. With the beef initiative that you and I just spoke at, it was discussed quite a bit, which is exciting.
Well, so let's go back to your story. So you're starting this functional medicine path as a patient first. How long did it take you to sort of like recover, I guess, nutritionally and all that? Like what was that process like?
It was probably a couple of years, but you feel better right away when you start doing the right things, like eliminating processed foods. You can feel better very quickly. And I can tell you, when I implement a kind of an elimination type diet and a get back to basics diet, my patients get better mental clarity. They feel better within one visit.
Wow.
And then they have the mental clarity to start the next step, which is usually, optimizing a healthy weight, getting back to exercise, getting more sunshine. We oftentimes do a liver cleanse. The same things that I did, I employ for my patients. So it doesn't take long, but people need a win. They've been so, they've gone so long without a win. And they really just need to move in the right direction. Just that first step is key. And once they get on the path of feeling better, then the next win is so much easier, and the next win. And people can turn things around very quickly. In fact, I talked about a couple that really turned their lives around in 1 year, and it happened to be the year before the pandemic. And they were both extremely high risk, and they've given me permission to talk about their case, but they were both extremely high risk for a bad outcome with COVID had they not turned things around a year before COVID. So they consider it a miracle because they both did get COVID and it was very minimal, but had they gotten it a year prior, things may not have gone the way they went with regard to their health. But even their pictures, they wanted me to share with everyone because it was such a dramatic improvement within a few weeks for both of them, and then it just continued and built because they were so excited to feel good and to have the energy to make the right choices and to get the right foods and start exercising and really making health a priority. When you make health a priority, every aspect of your life becomes more fruitful. It's really, you talk a lot about assets, and I know you talk a lot about Bitcoin and monetary policy, but without your health, none of that means anything. So it really needs to be seen as your most valuable asset. And then once you have your mental clarity and your health, the other goals that you have for your life, for your family, for your kids, for your community, fall into line so much easier because of the energy, the mental clarity, and really the vitality that you have. So it takes everything up a notch.
Well, do you feel like it's, a lot of people are sort of living in a mental fog or something like that?
Yes, and I think I call it brain fog. And that's probably one of the biggest complaints that people have when they first come to see me is I just can't think like I used to. And it's so easy to reverse through nutrition, but it just takes the right coach. And you don't even necessarily need a healthcare provider. You just need to recognize that there's a problem. And I think a lot of people say, well, it's a part of life. It's a part of aging. I'm just tired and I'm this age. And if you ask my patients, like the one I presented at the conference that you and I spoke at, they would tell you that in their mid-60s, they feel better than they did in their mid-20s. So it's not age. It's health, vitality, exercise, sleep, digestion, eliminating processed foods, getting rid of metabolic syndrome and sugar addiction. And it's just one step at a time. That may seem daunting, but the first step of getting mental clarity gives you the energy for all the other steps.
Was that your experience? Did you get the mental clarity first?
Absolutely. So I started with, I did a liver cleanse because I was a healthy weight. I was a triathlete, but I had elevated liver enzymes, which was, I checked my blood and I was like, I can't believe this. Exactly.
What does that mean, elevated
That means
liver?
that I had probably, I had been consuming toxins that had congested my liver. And even though I looked healthy on the outside, I certainly didn't feel healthy on the inside. And sure enough, my blood results showed that my liver wasn't healthy. It probably had something to do with the 10 cups of coffee that I was drinking to get through the day. And oh, by the way, those cups of coffee were filtered through a hot plastic K-cup. Probably that had something, because now we know that hot plastic, which is why they tell you not to heat things up in plastic in the microwave, is that some of the contaminants of the plastic can affect your liver, which is your filter, and clog it. So I started with a cleanse, eliminating processed foods, and doing a liver cleanse is actually what I did. And I used supplements to do that, and felt better pretty quickly, and then started down the road of rehabbing my gut, getting off the antibiotics. So it was just a little by little. But once you get that first win, you're kind of in, and you have the energy to take the step towards the second win.
Well, that's interesting that you described the liver cleanse as something that gave you mental clarity because you don't necessarily think of the
Oh,
two as the same. Or
right.
yeah.
So the liver filters all the toxins out of your body, and it also helps you process your hormones. And it's very important to eliminate inflammation. So if you have inflammation in your body or in your gut, I always say leaky gut equals foggy brain. And so getting the inflammation down in the gut and cleaning up the liver actually gives you tremendous mental clarity. And it's an important one of the first steps that I usually take.
And what does a liver cleanse look like? What do the patients do?
So there's an old-fashioned way,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a way that is you go at it through a kit, which has a lot of it has a nutrition plan and some educational material and certain supplements that go with it and the reasoning for those supplements. But I would say for your listeners, one of the best things that we can do to start a health journey going in the right direction is the old-fashioned way, which is simply get back to healthy food, healthy proteins like grass-fed beef, organic vegetables, things of that nature. And but start before you get to the dietary changes. Just do a 2-day bone broth cleanse, which is there's so many great recipes for bone broth, but I like Texas or grass-fed organic beef if you can find it. But you don't even have to do that. You can use a store-bought bone broth. But what the goal of that is really to heal the gut. So that things that are in your digestive tract that have been getting into your bloodstream before they were properly filtered, there should be a barrier between your digestive tract and the rest of your system. And what happens usually when people are unhealthy and have autoimmune disease is that the barrier is more permeable than it should be. And if you think about it, it's kind of like in your bathroom, in your shower, there's tiles and there's grout. There's a similar lining of cells in your gut of tiles and grout. So those grout, you can think of, the medical term is called tight junctions. They break down with processed food. And when you have a breakdown of that barrier, things that should stay in the digestive tract get into the bloodstream, things like bacteria and toxins and food that should be more filtered. And that can cause some inflammation and health problems. So that's usually where we start with the cleanse. So the bone broth cleanse helps get rid of the food for 2 days and heal the grout and the tight junctions and reseal. You're literally resealing the gut, kind of like you reseal your grout if you have a problem in your bathroom with water getting into the wall. Same sort of thing. So the 2-day bone broth cleanse is probably the easiest way, and you don't need a healthcare practitioner. You don't need a fancy kit. You can just start for 2 days with you can do black tea, black coffee, water, and bone broth. And you can keep the fat in the bone broth because that helps with your appetite. You can add ghee or grass-fed butter. And that's a great way to start. But there's other ways to start the health journey, and everyone's different. But I found almost universally that's a great, easy way to start. And then after 2 days, you literally, the gut regenerates very, very quickly, 2 or 3 days. And you can literally feel the mental clarity. And when you see that, it's very enlightening because some people have never felt that kind of mental clarity ever, or not since childhood. So it's a really nice way to kind of reconnect with what your true health potential is.
So you do this cleanse. Essentially, you're fasting with just these, 4 things: water, black tea, black coffee, and bone broth, to cleanse your digestive system and maybe get it to all regenerate. And that causes mental clarity, which gives you more motivation to do more steps. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And I think people would be really surprised if they just took those 2 days and got rid of the processed food and the sugar. It also curbs your appetite. And you don't feel hungry as long as you have some good healthy fat, especially the day before you start the cleanse. I like to give my patients permission to fat load a little bit with healthy fats, like a wild caught salmon or a ribeye or something that's grass fed. And so you go into the cleanse with enough fat in your system that you're not hungry, and then you can kind of get off this up and down sugar roller coaster that so many of us, and I certainly was on, and so many of us are on. So it's a good way to break the cycle in a way that's not, it's not as daunting of a task as you might think. It actually feels good, and you're not as hungry as you would think. You might be a little bit, at times a little bit hungry, but usually you just add a little bit of butter to your bone broth, and that usually is very, very satisfying. So it's a way to reset, reseal, get rid of processed food, and not and kind of retame your hunger.
So as you do this, and you've done this cleanse, you're feeling more, I guess, mentally clear. What do you do after that to sort of like make the habit stick? Because like you said, there is this sugar roller coaster. A lot of people are addicted to sugar, and getting off of sugar has got to be one of the more difficult things because it's such an addictive substance.
It's incredibly addictive, and some people compare it to cocaine as far as the addiction. But once you get off of it for those 48 hours, you've kind of re-leveled the playing field, and you're not on the sugar high, insulin high, and then it crashes and you need more, and then it crashes. It's a cycle. So that's a way to step out of the cycle and really make it a priority not to reintroduce those processed sugars and processed foods. So it becomes a much easier choice once you've done that 48-hour reset. And then you just make smart choices when you're not craving it. The craving, the cravings are so strong that without a reset, it's very challenging.
Well, I mean, that's, I think for a lot of people, this is where they tend to trip up, is being able to get off of sugar. Because, I got off of sugar many years ago, like starting with the paleo diet and then moving more towards keto, and now I'm a carnivore. But that process of like getting off of sugar, because it's such a taste that we crave in many ways. And to this day, I want to taste sugary stuff, and I'll use like sugar substitutes of some kind just to get that taste. But what's a way in which you can sort of mentally get off of that thing?
Well, if you break the insulin roller coaster, insulin sugar roller coaster, and you get off of it, then you're not having those plummets in your blood sugar, and you don't crave it as much. And really, I think getting healthy protein and fat is the best way to keep your appetite under control. And then try and it's a lot easier than you think once you've done that 40. I would encourage everyone to try it. Well, you've done it, I'm sure, because you're all, I didn't realize you were all carnivore.
I am now. And I've done longer fasts than 2 days, like just to reset my body. But actually, like, I'd like to ask you, like, from a medical perspective, what's happening in those 2 days that makes it so effective? You talked about, like, sort of like relining the gut,
relining the gut,
reforming the liver, but like, I guess maybe even psychologically, does your relationship with food change or something like that?
It actually does.
Okay.
And you have more control over your cravings. And I think there's a reason. I know you wrote the book, Thank God for Bitcoin. I think there's a reason why many religions in this world focus on fasting for spiritual growth. And it's not just Christianity. It's all major religions that I know of focus on some degree of fasting. I think it's a way to get mental clarity and spiritual growth that's different from any other mechanism, because you're so in the moment and clear. And I'm sure you found that when you were fasting. It's a special time. It really is. It's a special time for mental growth, and oftentimes we don't even think that we need it until we do it. And then when you do it, you feel more at peace, less irritability, more clear. Just you feel more like, I think, nature intended us to feel, the way God intended us to feel, which is present, non-distracted, focused, the best version of yourself. And so I think fasting is part of religion because it does bring such mental clarity and peace. It really does.
Well, and there's definitely a spiritual aspect to it, and there's maybe a relational aspect to food and things like that. But there's also a lot of hormonal things that are going on in your body, right? Like with maybe your insulin sensitivity and I guess your thyroid function and many things like that. What are some of the benefits of doing some of those things?
So one important thing is that most people go into a little bit of ketosis, which is supposed to be a very good reset. In fact, there's a lot of research that supports it's a really good reset for the brain because the brain it turns out that the brain seems to be very sensitive to insulin and glucose, and it can trigger some inflammation in the brain. And in fact, we think quite a bit of dementia is triggered by this insulin sugar roller coaster. So that's one thing that gives you mental clarity is that it puts your body starts making ketones, which are nourishing and anti-inflammatory to the brain. So that's one reason. But I think probably the biggest benefit is flattening out that roller coaster that we mentioned before. It's so, it really is so commanding of your appetite and your life. And sometimes just stepping off of it is just a game changer.
Yeah, I have noticed that after I fast. One of the things I realize is I often eat just because I'm bored. Right? Like I just need to do something. And it's not even sugar addiction because I don't really eat sugar anymore. It's just I want to do, like it's like an oral fixation or something. And that's indicative of, to me, of a bad relationship with food. I'm not using it to nourish my body. I'm using it to entertain myself or something like that.
Right. But have you noticed that you're less likely to do that if you're well nourished?
Yeah, I've definitely, I don't do it nearly as much. So you'll laugh at this. I used to be a vegetarian.
I was too at one point, trying to heal myself, thinking that was the right way. So I've been there too, and that was not the right way for me.
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't because I'd be hungry every few hours, and I would never feel satisfied, and that was one of the real things I think I learned about nutrition. That okay, like your body, I eliminated the wrong things. I was eating a lot of processed food and things like that as a vegetarian, which doesn't make any sense now. And I had the wrong thing, and I'm just like looking at the pictures of myself. I'm like, I look malnourished. Like my shoulders are bony, and I have no muscle tone. It just kind of crazy. And I was a healthy weight, like you were saying, right? And it's like, wait, what's going on? How is it that I look really terrible?
It's funny that you said you were eating for entertainment and just wanting to chew. Maybe you were deficient in something, and maybe your body was telling you you were looking for a way to replace that. And maybe that was part of, when people are deficient in iron, they chew ice for some reason. Just for there are other things like kids sometimes will, if they're deficient in iron, they will eat dirt, which is strange. So chewing ice and eating, but I'm not saying, in an adult, but I'm just saying there are strange things that you should listen to if you're feeling like you're constantly searching for something for what you say is like a form of weakness. It may not be. It may be your body telling you that you're deficient in something, and it may be worth, trying some like a multi-mineral or something.
Oh, interesting.
But you have to be really careful about the kind of supplements that you get, because you want them sourced in the United States. We have really good regulation around manufacturing. And then some companies take it to another level where they have labs third-party verify to look for purity and potency. And those are the kind of supplements that you want to gear towards. And those are easy to find online. You can do some research. But in general, I like my patients to do, U.S.-based. And a lot of my patients had food sensitivity, so I like it to be gluten, dairy, soy-free. And I like to know the source of where the minerals are coming from.
Well, so let's talk about like sort of the quality of food and what things to avoid, because I know you're very much into grass-fed beef, very anti-seed oil. Can you talk about some of the evils of seed oil and some of this other stuff that might be detrimental to our health?
Sure. I think the big topic coming that's coming in health is going to be eliminating unhealthy oils. And it turns out that we really need good healthy fat for hormone production, especially for men, for testosterone production. But I think we've really focused on cholesterol as being the bad thing. But it turns out cholesterol is really the building block for a lot of our hormones. It's very important for brain function. It's very important for, like I said, hormone production, immune function. It's neurologically very, very important. So I think for decades, we did the wrong thing by eliminating healthy animal cholesterol. And then we looked for the alternative, which was a processed vegetable type oil, which the word vegetable means healthy. But now we're learning that oil oxidizes and causes a lot of inflammation, even brain inflammation. And we're just starting to get that message out. But I do encourage anyone that's having brain fog to try to completely eliminate seed oils, which are the vegetable, the canola oils and those sorts of things, safflower. Try and eliminate them, and it's not as hard as it seems. They are in everything. If you start reading labels, you'll be shocked. Even bread or anything that's remotely processed, almost anything has it because it's inexpensive and it's just widely used. So, but there are alternative products, and you just have to do a little bit of homework and find the products that are the equal substitute for what you normally like. And cooking is a big one. You can cook with other types of oil like ghee and even lard and grass-fed butter, MCT or coconut oil, medium chain triglyceride oil, avocado oil. You can use those sorts of things, and you really can't taste much of a difference in your food. And so there's an easy substitute. And then the products that you normally buy, you can find that are seed oil free now, but it just takes a little bit of education and looking.
And that seed oil inflames a lot of stuff in your body. And what are some symptoms that you might feel as a result of that?
I think brain fog is probably one of the biggest, but any inflammatory condition, and it really depends on the person. Some people may have more inflammation in their skin. Some people may have more inflammation in their digestive tract. Some people may have liver congestion, brain fog. So it really depends on the individual. But the only way to know is really to eliminate it. And I encourage people to just commit to whatever amount of time that you can actually feel like you can be successful. And maybe try it for a couple of weeks. Make sure you have plenty of substitutes so that you don't feel like you're going to fall off the plan. And just see how you feel. And then if you really want to prove it to yourself, you can reintroduce the seed oil and feel the difference. And it's usually a pretty dramatic difference.
So when did you eliminate seed oil in your diet, and how did you feel when you did that?
It's really started to become more research recently. So it's something that I've started doing. I've started implementing fairly recently. But what I used to do when I was on my health journey of getting back to good health was I eliminated gluten because I thought gluten was the culprit. But it turns out most of the gluten products had seed oil combined with them. So I was eliminating seed oil by eliminating gluten. And I felt better, and I attributed it all to the gluten. But I think it was more now. I think it was more seed oil.
Oh, that's interesting. So do you think a lot of people with gluten sensitivities are actually like, it's a seed oil sensitivity of some kind?
It could be the combination of gluten and seed oil. But I also think a lot of people with gluten sensitivity have leaky gut, and the gluten is passing through that barrier in a way that's less natural than if the gut was sealed. So if you had a healthy gut, it's possible that some people with gluten sensitivity would be able to tolerate it more easily. It depends on the individual. There are certain there are certainly people that can't tolerate gluten, obviously celiac and gluten sensitive. And one of the best ways to know if you're sensitive to gluten is to do a 2-day bone broth cleanse and then only reintroduce gluten for a few hours and see how you feel.
Oh, wow. That's
like, eat something that's high in gluten and just prove it to yourself.
And at that point, if you're like
if you feel tired and foggy, those are the two biggest symptoms. Just you feel sluggish. Then that's something to take note of. Maybe take notes, keep a notebook and say, this is how I felt an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours after eating this. And then go on to the next experiment. Maybe it's corn. Some people don't do well with corn. So
that you got a lot of different sort of things to try with an elimination diet, I guess.
You do, but it's not. The reason why I like it so much is that it's not dependent on a healthcare provider to implement. I want to empower people that there are simple steps that you can do to prove to yourself that this is beneficial and to see what you're truly capable of.
Well, that's interesting because this is your practice. You're just sort of like taking yourself out of the equation, or convincing people to not use people like you, I guess, to do that. What makes you say that? What's the motivation to
encourage people to do things?
Yeah,
I think people have been so. Maybe it's kind of the centralized we can talk about centralization and the importance of being sovereign. And from a health standpoint, from a monetary, from an education standpoint, what else? I mean, every way. The importance of taking accountability for your own health. And I think that power has been handed in many ways over to our medical system that is very dysfunctional. And I don't see it being rehabbed anytime soon. In fact, it seems like it's becoming more and more dysfunctional and people are becoming more and more dependent on it. And I'd like to present and empower people to change for themselves and take accountability for their own health and realize it's not this daunting task, that they actually can do it. And it's worthwhile. And so that's why I think that's one of the main reasons why I do shows like this is that, I feel badly for people entrusting their most valuable asset to a system that doesn't always know what to do with that.
Well, so let's talk about that a little bit, because in a sense, I think what you're saying is that the healthcare system is broken, especially conventional medicine.
Completely broken.
Okay, so what's so broken about it? What like if I break a leg, they know how to fix it.
It's wonderful if you break a leg, but then you have to ask the question, well, why did I break my leg? Well, did I break it because of trauma, or did I break it because I hadn't been eating enough nutrients and then I have weak bones, or I hadn't gotten sunlight in years, or so it is a great system when something goes terribly wrong. But what is way more important is to know what you need to do for your own health far before something goes wrong, before the dementia starts, before the brain fog starts, before whatever autoimmune condition starts, how to prevent it. And we don't focus on prevention. And you can just look at our health population or just our entire population and see that we're not focusing enough on prevention and empowering people. And I think managed care gives you 10 minutes with your with your doctor, with your to tend to your most valuable asset. How does that make sense? You and I spend time, with our accountants and hopefully, attorneys if you need one, or you spend a lot more time than you do with your doctor oftentimes. And the way managed care has evolved, it's sicker and sicker patients, less and less time with your doctor, more and more symptom management. And each time you deliver a pharmaceutical, oftentimes there's another symptom that comes along a few months later that you have to manage. And so it's kind of a vicious cycle. And I've seen it evolve throughout my career, and it's not getting better. It's actually getting a lot worse. And I really went into medicine hoping to have a relationship with each individual patient where we were on the same team, we worked together, and we independent of any other factors. That the patient and the doctor, myself and my teammate, I should say, really took an individual approach to help them achieve vitality and optimal health. And it seems like every step along the way has chipped away at that relationship.
It's interesting because I've had two other doctors like you on this show, Dr. Sean Baker, who's a carnivore, and Dr. Jason Fung, who's he does the fasting, complete guide to fasting, endocrinologist from Canada. And they both express a similar thing that you said, which is, I got into, being a doctor because I wanted to help heal people. And they weren't getting better. And that to me is just such an indictment against the healthcare profession, or that so many people become more dependent on the healthcare system than get better. It's all symptom management and give them the latest drug to help them or something like that. Do you think the monetary aspect has something to do with this?
I think the monetary aspect has everything to do with this, unfortunately, except for the people who are in it for the right reasons. But those people typically don't manage the stress of it because there's such a conflict of interest to spend less and less time with patients, work harder and harder, longer hours, sicker patients, and then that cycle it just repeats. Like Groundhog Day every day. So, it is a very challenging system to operate in, if not almost impossible. And it's been a daunting career. In some cases, it's there are days when you want to wave the white flag and say, I don't know what else I can do with the tools that have been given to me. And that's where I was a few years back, and I decided to opt out of the system. And that was scary. And I had a family to support, but I opted out of the system, and I didn't know if people would value that, and if they would be willing to join that team and use their resources and their time, and vice versa, and accomplish that goal together. And what I found, which was quite surprising, actually, I didn't know if it would work, but I said, if I don't try, I'll never know. What I found was that people do value the doctor-patient relationship, and they are willing to form that team and invest in that team. And so I turned my career over to a non-system managed approach many years ago, and focused on personalized medicine and preventative medicine and health optimization. We talked about nutrition today, but there are so many other facets of it. Probably for another show. We can talk about other things, but that's just the first step that's manageable for most of the people that I've worked with.
So I think, just to make it clear, what you're saying is you changed your practice over to a cash-based system instead of using the insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid and all the other different programs that are out there.
Which was scary. And but the way the system was moving towards, you either had to join a group and operate by their rules in order to have a sustainable practice. And I didn't want that. I always wanted to be a solo practitioner. I always wanted to be,
your own boss.
My own boss. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And that was just the way I'm made. I wanted to have my own business, and I wanted to have a solo practice. And it was no longer doable. It used to be that solo practitioners or small groups were the majority of the doctors. And especially when I finished medical school and residency, it's become, almost all of them have disappeared. They're like the dinosaurs, going the way of the dinosaurs. But there are a few of us still out there that value that type of practice.
Well, so it must be interesting running a cash-based business because you have a direct economic relationship with your patient, whereas, and I've had Ovik Roy and Andy Schoonover on the show, and they talk about the economics of healthcare, where you're paying the insurance company and the insurance company pays the doctor, that sort of corrupts the relationship, because
It does.
all you care about is your deductible, and it's all the insurance company cares about is, how do we make sure that it doesn't cost us more money or something like that.
And when a patient chooses you just because you're on their insurance, you may not be aligned on the same page. You may, but you also may not. And when someone seeks you out because of your skill set and they are willing to invest in that, that's a totally different practice. And I've found it to be much more satisfying. And I think my patients would agree that it's a much better situation for them. They have freedom over when they want to come see me, and we're on the same team, and my time, they can have as much as they want. It's really just a normal professional relationship, the way things should be.
There's no trusted third party or some third party that has completely different financial motivations than
right. Well, they actually
patient.
have a conflict of interest, right? Because their business model is to pay for less and give less. And my business model with each individual patient is based on the individual's needs. And it's a team.
And you get to do more of what you want to do as a doctor.
Exactly. And they're coming to me because of what I do, and they appreciate it. So it's much more fulfilling.
Which is what the medical profession should be. Yet it's so tragic to me that all these doctors that I have on my show, they're like, yeah, I couldn't do that, because essentially they continue to be sick, and I have to do things a way that I don't think should be done. And, it's interesting that all of you have sort of drifted a little differently and found sort of a niche in doing what you want to do, but you've had to kind of go around the system in order to do it.
Yeah, and it was a leap of faith. It really was a hard decision, but it comes to a point where you know that it's this or nothing. You cannot function and maintain your oath, which we took an oath when that I take seriously. And I wasn't able to give my patients the best in a dysfunctional system. And it literally got to the point where I had to forget everything that I ever knew about how a practice should be run, and, jump into the deep end and just hopefully swim.
Well, so it sounds like you're, I guess, bringing innovation to healthcare, which is a system that's very resistant to sort of new entrepreneurial models. Do you feel like this is something that needs to happen more often? Because I have gone to a functional medicine doctor, and it was very different. Among other things, I know about selenium, because she was like, you should have some Brazil nuts, because that has selenium.
Yeah, remember that, everyone. Brazil nuts are really good for your metabolism. Yeah, that's a good tip.
Yeah, so random things like that, and I had I had to take a stool sample so I could check the flora of my gut and everything else.
Normal things that probably everyone should do if they have a problem. But yeah, I mean, but the regular healthcare system does not reimburse. I'm sure you had to pay for all of that.
Yeah,
because those studies aren't traditionally offered. I mean, in limited ways they could be, but the majority of time they're not reimbursable.
Well, what's nice about it is there are market forces that operate on that stuff, so they continuously get cheaper. Whereas
exactly.
Whereas an MRI is still many tens of thousands, however much it is.
It can be very, very expensive depending on whatever your insurance has negotiated with whatever MRI center.
Yeah.
It
just seems insane, because when you have a large demand for stool samples or whatever, the cost comes down.
Right.
Whereas with this weird healthcare system that we have, none of that happens.
Up, actually.
Yeah.
Costs go up, and it's kind of like in a lot of these big systems, it's like a monopoly. So yeah, stepping out and regaining your health. And then the cool thing about doing that is that you don't need much after that. Once you regain your health, you just need a checkup every once in a while to make sure that everything's still on the right track. But it seems so simple, doesn't it? And it kind of aligns with what you're doing of being sovereign and taking responsibility for your health and your own finances and your own education. I I watched some of the things that you were talking about, you know, stepping out of what we think is the only option, which is higher education, and learning different ways. I think that'll be a big trend, and hopefully this health crisis will push us all towards taking responsibility for our own health and working with a teammate to get on the right path to where you don't need us as often.
Yeah, I was talking to Andy Schoonover, and one of the things that he does with Crowd Health is, you know, you're able to have your own sort of like health savings account, but he doesn't handle any of the money, so everything is sort of voluntarily paid for. But one of the things that he was saying was there was a hospital that wanted like $80,000 for a particular surgery. Shopped around, they found a specialist that does just that procedure all day long, paid cash $25,000. They saved like $50,000 just by shopping around, which seems insane to me. Like people, like there's
it's normal market though. A normal thing to do is to find the best and, you know, weigh that with the cost and do your regular, you know, shopping and supply demand type dynamic.
The economics just work out, and that doctor was happy to take it because it's like, we're gonna give you cash. You don't have to deal with any insurance. You're not gonna get paid 60, 90 days out. You're just gonna get it. Oh yeah, I'll give you a huge discount for that one. Like that makes all the sense in the world.
It just makes perfect sense. So I mean, big problems, system that's broken. And we can list all of them. But simple solutions is get back to relationships, get back to your community, to being a sovereign individual, to taking control and accountability. Weaponize your health by your best defense against anything that they throw at you or anything that comes down the pike from a infectious disease standpoint. Your best defense is your health, your mental clarity in every way. It just takes life up a level.
It's so interesting to me, though, that you're a very personable, person. I guess they would call it you have very good bedside manner or whatever,
Thank
right?
you.
As a doctor. But the thing that I'm noticing about you is that there's a human connection that you've sort of developed, I guess, maybe as part of your practice, being sort of like in a relationship with all of your patients, which is direct and economic.
Right.
We tend to think of capitalism as this dirty word that like makes everything impersonal, when in fact with the healthcare system, because you're being, I guess, more capitalist, like not having to deal with all the insurance stuff, it's actually made you almost like a more community-centered, like personable, like able to care for your patients in a more humane way, and it's like it seems like a much better system rather than a worse one.
Well, it's mutually beneficial because I'm valued and I value them, and it's just a great working relationship. You enjoy going you enjoy going to the office. They're like family in a professional way, and there's just no doubt that we're on the same team. We have the same, we celebrate our wins, we redirect our losses, and we regroup and find a better plan, and it's individual approach. And I never want to give someone more than what they can handle at that particular point. I want to give them hope, and I want to give all of your listeners hope that this is not, it's not that hard. We can do this, and we need to reclaim this. It's very important that we reclaim our health so that we can make the right choices for our family and give the most to our community and be the best versions of ourselves and enjoy our lives. It adds richness and like I said, vitality to have health play a part in our time, which is our equally a valuable asset, probably time and health.
Yeah, I mean, time is money is really a representation of the time that you put in. So in a sense, it's, it's a poor substitute, but in a sense, that's where we.
But what's really interesting? I have noticed time after time after time that anyone who is an entrepreneur or business owner or even in sales, working for someone, when they regain their health, they have their record years. It's very interesting. And they'll come in and say, like, for example, I'll tell some of my I have some real estate agents that are in my practice, and one in particular I'm thinking of. And I said, we're going to rebalance you, and you're going to get your drive back, because she was getting tired and didn't want to put herself out there quite as much. And I said, when you get your drive back, there's a magnetism. When you have health, when you walk in the room, there's a magnetism, or people will come to you because they want that energy that you have. And so it's also a business decision. It's the best thing you can do for yourself, but it's also the best thing you can do for your profession. It takes it up a level.
Very nice. That's interesting, because as you improve one aspect of your life, a lot of other things kind of fall into place, is I think essentially what you're saying.
Exactly. And your health, it's important for your relationships, and to be a better parent, to be a better friend, to be a better family member. So it's just so simple to put first, and we just need to prioritize.
Well, I think a lot of people that are listening to this will be very curious, and trying, maybe starting with like a 2-day bone broth sort of cleanse of your liver and your gut, and giving your digestive system a chance to regenerate. It is very empowering, and it seems like something that anyone can do. How really young can you do this? Like what's sort of like the limit there?
I only usually do this for adults.
Okay.
And Texas Slim and I decided, I was telling him about this cleanse, and he said, "Oh, I've done that before. I felt so great. I don't know why I haven't done it in so long." And I said, "Well, it's really nice." I said, "Sometimes I'll do it with my patients, because I need them on the other end to be accountable to do it, because it's not the easiest thing in the world. It ends up being pretty easy, but just setting a date. So sometimes I'll tell a patient, "Hey, they're concerned." I say, "It's not as bad as you think. I'll do it with you." And I, of course, get benefits from that. And then I have somebody on the other side that I'm accountable to in a way, even though we don't talk while we're doing it, or I see them back at their next visit. "How did it go?" I was there with you in spirit.
Sure.
And I do it. And I was telling him that, and he said, "You know what? We should really do this as a community, and set our date, and get our ducks in a row, get everything ready, put our recipes out, and do it together. And if your religious beliefs believe that you can dedicate it to someone or a cause, which I think you and I both come from that similar type of belief system, you can offer it up for a good cause, and you reap the benefits. So it's healthy, it's good for you, it makes you more mentally clear, spiritually enlightening, and offering it up for someone in need is a nice extra motivation to get it done.
There's also a lot of religious calendars where you do have like days of fasting. So traditionally in Christianity, Good Friday to Easter Sunday, that's a good time to about 2 days worth of fasting there. Some people even fast for the entirety of Lent and stuff like that. So
that's a tough one.
But
you would need a doctor's supervision that's an expert, like the gentleman you mentioned earlier. But yeah, there's something for everyone in fasting, intermittent fasting. A lot of my patients have had tremendous success just eating within a 6-hour window. But that's not for everyone either. It's just different people excel with different. That's why personalizing it is so important. But the 2-day community bone broth cleanse is actually next week. If you want to join us, I'm doing it. So we're going to fat load, meaning we'll eat healthy animal protein fat on next, what is it? I think the 13th, we're going to fat load on Wednesday, and then we're going to do the bone broth cleanse on Thursday and Friday, which includes healthy fats, so you don't get hungry, and just a reset and do it as a community. And I think that's kind of nice to have a start date and a plan, and have other people doing it with you, just to know that someone's there in the same boat is nice and empowering.
I know whenever I fast with my wife, it's a lot easier for both of us, just because we're in the same house, and it's like, okay,
we're going to do it. It's kind of a competition, I bet. We're going to do it together.
Little bit. And it's, just sort of check in on how we're doing. And it's like, it's so much easier. Okay, so this has been a very inspiring, I think, episode, and I really hope that you can continue innovating, and we hopefully we can get more doctors like you, right? So you can have more of a relationship with your doctor instead of a relationship with your healthcare network that's really kind of feels like a cog in a machine or something like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, where can people find you? Where can people contact you?
So, I'm doing this really because I like to serve, and I'm not looking to grow my practice right now. But I do have a website that has some educational information on it, and I'm just starting to get a little bit more active on Twitter, and I want to start a YouTube channel because even though I can help one person at a time in my practice, it's nice to have a large audience that I can help a lot of people at no cost, and it's just a way of giving back. So if they'd like if your listeners would like to see some of the educational information, which I need to update even every constantly, but it's a wealth of information. My website is marycairemd.com, and I'm at marycairemd on Twitter for now.
All right, awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anytime. Happy to be here. Happy to help.